Good evening. Welcome to our nightly devotional. We have been focusing on the topic renew, rebuild, and restore. So I know it has been easy. Of course, that's how it usually works. So, hi, Sister Marilyn. I'm coming back on video in a minute. There we go. So, so So I thank you guys for your patience. We just had some things that had to happen last week and they had to be handled. Everything is going well and it's great. And so we're back. And I think, yes, something happened with the internet. And for some reason, it went off camera and froze. So as always, it's just lovely, lovely how, people try to do things. It's like 8 o'clock. They know, people know what I be doing. I am doing, devotional. Like, why they calling me? So, but we are continuing on with our devotional renew, rebuild, and restore. And tonight's topic is rebuilding your wall. It's rebuild your wall. And we think about rebuilding a wall. It's just like sometimes we tell, people tell us that we have to tear down our walls and we don't need to be so closed off. However, that is contrary to popular belief. It depends on the type of wall in which we are talking about. Sometimes we have to have a wall to keep out certain forces and certain things that we don't need to have around us and about us. So therefore, it needs to happen. You do need to, rebuild your wall. And tonight's scripture is coming from Nehemiah, the 2nd chapter and the 18th verse. And we will be reading the New Living Translation version. And so I'm going to bring that up on screen. Just give me a second and we are going to read it together. And it reads as such, Nehemiah, the 2nd chapter, the 18th verse, and it says, "Then I told them about how the gracious hand of God had been on me and about my conversation with the king. They replied at once, 'Yes, let's rebuild the wall.' So they began the good work." Now, if you know the story about Nehemiah and the wall, you will understand that, the people of Jerusalem were troubled because the wall, had been torn down, it had been destroyed. There was much sadness, it was much mourning, and they didn't know particularly what to do. And when Nehemiah learns of this, what he does is he wept and he mourned for days. He fasted and he prayed to God. He confessed his sins and the sins of his people and asked for the Lord's mercy. Now, what made it, privileged for this point is that, Jerusalem had been destroyed by the Babylonians. And yes, the wall lay in ruins, but see, Nehemiah was in a coveted position. He was in a privileged position. He was the cupbearer to the king of Persia. And so therefore, he had a special position. He was placed in a position that he could assist, that God can use him, that God can do what God needed to do in order to get things done. See, sometimes God will put us in a position and we don't understand why we got there or how come we're there, but it's for a specific time. Just if you read the story of Esther and you read that story, she was placed in the king's palace for a specific time. God always does things for a reason. So never think that the place that you're in or the job that you're at or the people you come in contact with is by some happenstance, just some miraculous thing. It is all godly design. It is always designed for the uplifting and the building of the kingdom. Now, when they decided, when he prayed, God had told him what he needed to do, God gave him favor from the king. And the king allows him to return and rebuild Jerusalem's wall. And when he gets there, he calls on his peeps. Yeah, he calls on his crew. He calls on the Jewish people to rebuild it. And then he explains to them, we are rebuilding this because God has given us favor and God has given us purpose. And he is allowing us to be able to rebuild this wall. Hi, Sister Maria, how are you doing on this evening? So he has been given favor, and he's instructing and telling them how he's been given favor and what they need to do. Now, see, here's the thing. Whenever you are doing something for God, whenever you are going outside of what everyone thinks is the status quo, when you have people who are truly your enemies, I'm not talking about what we call haters or the ones that may not like us. I'm talking about the one who is there to destroy us, who that is their purpose, their primary goal, and they try to do it at every given turn and chance. Those are your enemies. Anyone who's against God and what God has to offer and what God is doing in the uplifting of the kingdom, that's your enemy. Not the person who don't like what you got on. That's not your enemy. So his enemies, they mocked him and the builders of the wall, but because here's the catch. They knew what God had promised and they knew what God had told them to do. And because of that, they were not intimidated and they continued their work. And they prayed and sought wisdom. They set guard. Basically, they did work, but they made sure that it didn't befall upon people who didn't, definitely wanted to destroy it. So they made sure they protected it. Sometimes what we do is we'll build and we'll do all this stuff, that God wants us to do. And then we still leave it out for, the vultures and the enemies to come in and then picking apart what they want. And then we wonder why we keep having to rebuild and do this, because we let it go. That's what happened. But not only were they not deterred, they make sure that people were standing guard and they were watching over what was being done so that nobody can sneak in and undermine what God had ordained to be done. And he encouraged the people, Nehemiah encouraged the people not to be afraid of the enemies. And that is what many of the times when we got people in our corner who is there to push us, to hold us accountable, to make us step up to that next level. They're the ones that's going to be praying with you, for you, over you. Those are going to be the ones that's going to be encouraging you to go to the next level. They're going to tell you, don't pay attention to what someone else says, and then because of that community, because of that, God-given talent, it was done in 52 days. Imagine what can be done if we focus on what God tells us to do. And if we come together as a community with one accord and one mind and not listen to the naysayers and not be distracted by those who were doing everything. If we did what God wanted us to do, you would be amazed that it could take months instead of years, days instead of months. So we have to learn that community and coming together is still key. But you may be saying, how does this reflect on my life? How does this talk about what I need to do in my day to day? So let's go over a few points about this particular story. Now, see, number one, even though Nehemiah, was working with the king, he still had to earn the king's credibility. That means he had to have a trust factor. He had to have a relationship. How many times we're in positions of, whether it's our jobs, whether it's where we're connected with volunteering, and we may not like so-and-so, but we still have to have a relationship with them, because that relationship builds the credibility. Now, it may not build the credibility with that particular person, but it may be that higher up. It may be people that you don't know that's looking. So therefore, a relationship is necessary, because you have to know how you'll be able to move. So you have to have credibility with the person. So that's what he did. He had to build credibility with the king. See, you have to have a credibility with people in authority, whether it's your parents, the teachers, supervisors, pastors, ministers, deacons, whoever it is. You have to have credibility. They have to know that your word is your word. They have to know that when you said you're going to do something, you actually do it, that you upstanding with integrity and honor and truth, that when they put something to your hands, they don't have to worry about if it's going to be done. They already know that it's going to be done. And that is how you build credibility. And that's what he did. You know, the king knew he was Jewish, but he still did his job. Another thing when it comes to rebuilding our wall, rebuilding our foundation, is what Nehemiah did is he fasted and prayed and asked for God's mercy prior to taking any action. Like, he knew what was going on. He saw what was going on. And instead of trying to act and try to correct it, he fasted, he prayed, he sought God's wisdom for God to tell him what to do. He didn't take it upon himself. And see, so many times we decide to take things upon ourselves. And then when it doesn't work, that's when we want to go to God and cry out and seek him and fast and do all these things, when you should be doing it before you take action, because the action you think you may need to take may not be the one. He's going to direct you the way he needs it to go, not the way you want it to go. See, in order to rebuild, we need preparation in the presence of God. It doesn't matter whether it's yourself, whether it's a ministry, whether it's an organization, whether it's friendships, whether it's family relationships, whatever it is you are seeking to rebuild, you have to go before the presence of the Almighty and prepare yourself. You can't just come out there any your kind of way, how you want to and when you want to. You have to be prepared in his presence. Another thing that Nehemiah did when he was preparing to go out and seek the authority to rebuild this wall, you know, when we think about Nehemiah's testimony, it wasn't about just rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, but it was also rebuilding the lives of people. So many times we think we're doing one thing when it's actually a double-edged thing. You know, we may be giving clothes to somebody, but yes, we're giving clothes, but we're giving also self-confidence. We're showing love. We're showing compassion. We're showing someone that they're worthy, that they're valued, you know. So therefore, anytime we do anything, it is more than just the act itself. When Nehemiah was rebuilding the wall, it gave people hope. It gave them hope to the fact that, you know, God was hearing them, that God understood what was going on, and God was providing. So when we become obedient and we do those things, we are doing more than just the task at hand. You know, it's more than that. It's definitely more than just, oh, I'm just going to do it this way. So also what Nehemiah did that we have to become better at, he did not claim glory for himself. He didn't say, hey, look at me. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm doing it. He didn't do that at all. It was all about God. All about God. He gave him the complete glory. Nothing. His name wasn't even in the mix. And sometimes what happens is that we still want a little bit for ourselves. But if we give God the proper praise and the proper acknowledgement, he will acknowledge us. He will set your path. So we don't have to go and boast on ourselves. He will boast on us. So know that anytime you're doing any rebuilding, anytime you're doing anything for the kingdom, it is always for the kingdom. God always gets the glory. God always gets the recognition. And anything outside of that, he will take care of. You don't have to worry about that. He will take care of it. And finally, when Nehemiah was facing oppositions from the enemies, when they were trying to tear him down, when they was trying to get him to distract and to do other things, he did not give up his trust in God. See, we may decide to rebuild something in our lives, whether it's a relationship with God or with our friends and our families. See, we need to remember that the enemy will do whatever he can to stop that rebuilding process by any means necessary. What we must do is we have to stay focused and not give up. Because the minute you give in and the minute you give it to, any type of credit or anything like that, he is in it. He's in it like Bennett. He's like, oh, this is how you want to operate? Oh, I could do this all day long. Trust me, I can. And so, therefore, ignore him. I'm good at ignoring people. Trust me, I am. I'm real good at ignoring people. No and ifs or buts about it. I can do it with my eyes closed, open, whatever. And that's what we got to do with the enemy. We have to ignore him. We have to make sure that, we don't get into, the things he's trying to do in reference to us. We have to make sure that the God that we serve is the only thing that we are paying attention to, and no one else. And no one else. Can it be trying? Yes. Can it be sometimes you just want to throw in the towel? Absolutely. But you can't. You cannot. Many people's lives are predicated on us being obedient. On us being obedient. See, we can't just decide that we're going to do this when we want to do this. Or we can't just decide because we don't feel like it today, we just not going to do it. People are dependent on us to become and be obedient. So we can't be worrying about what no one else says. People are dependent on us rebuilding a relationship that was torn down years ago, but it's in us rebuilding that relationship. It is us showing the love of God that's going to change the situation. Now, it may not be when you see it. It may not be in your time, but there's times that God is trusting us to plant the seed so that we can make a difference, that we can change things. And see, what we have to focus on, even in our prayers, we have to ask God to help us to be faithful and humble before him, and to give us the strength and the courage to rebuild things that he wants us to rebuild in our life. And so, because if you try to do it by yourself, it won't work. And I know that's being negative. That's not being uplifting. It's being honest. Because every time you go outside of him, every time you try to do it outside of yourself, it doesn't work. There's one person that can only help this work, and that's God. And you have to seek him. You have to lay before him. You have to be in his presence and listen to his guidance and allow him to guide you before you do anything. Because if you don't, it will lead to disaster. It will. So what are you working on to rebuild? What is it that God has told you that you need to rebuild and you've been apprehensive about it? Or you said, you know what, I'll do it later. That's not the time. Later is not the time here to do something. It's time to do it now. But you don't do it alone. You fast, you pray, and you seek him, and you allow him to give you his ultimate guidance and you won't have to worry about it. He will direct your path all the way around, and you will never doubt where he's taking you. So trust in him, never give up on him, never stray. Because if you do it his way, it will always work out for your benefit and his glory. So I want to thank you for joining us this evening for Renew, Rebuild, Restore, Rebuild Your Wall. It has been a pleasure speaking with you this evening. If you are not a part of the group and you're in Facebook, definitely I want you to join us. You can find us at YV Daily Devotionals. That's Y as in yellow, V as in Victor, Daily Devotionals. All the videos are there. All the bonus content is there. The mini family is there. So come on over and join us and have a great time with the things that we are doing. Also, if you have a praise report or prayer request, definitely let us know what that is, because we always want to, keep you lifted in prayer. Myself and Minister Peterson is praying for you on a consistent and daily basis, but sometimes you may need something to be prayed for in a specific fashion, and we need to know what that may be. Okay, so I see Sister Marilyn will definitely be keeping you in prayer for that. Make sure that everything goes well, and that we're claiming that everything is definitely going to go well, as you know, because we serve a God that is awesome. So, for a few months. Awesome. So we'll definitely be keeping you in prayer for that. She's having some things done on her back. So we're definitely, the back is a sensitive area. We definitely want to keep that in prayer and make sure we just want to pray that God steadies the hand of the physician and that all is going to be well. There's not going to be any complications, and she's going to be able to continue to do the things that God has, called her to do as well. Any praise reports, definitely let us know. Now, we'll be back here tomorrow at the beautiful time of 8 p.m. Yes, we are back on track and back on schedule with everything. Yay! And so we'll be back here tomorrow at 8 p.m. As we continue on with our study of Renew, Rebuild, and Restore. It is definitely is getting better. And we have this whole week is focused on rebuilding. It is definitely focused on rebuilding, so you definitely don't want to miss it. Know that I love you guys so very much. Myself and Minister Peterson, again, are always praying for you, and we are very gracious that you allow us in your homes on each and every weeknight. But we love you so very much. But have a great evening. Be blessed, and we'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. Love you a lot. Good night. The heck?